Hi, and welcome to a very special Retro Ramble, because today we're going to be starting a small series. It's going to be a small series over a few episodes dedicated to a game series. Possibly about it, definitely my all-time favourite series of games. They are, as you can see, the Elite games. And today we're going to kick off with Elite. Elite was developed by David Braben and Ian Bell and was released in 1984, initially on the BBC Micro. I would have liked to have shown you that version today, but due to site issues, I can't really play the BBC version because of the nature of the graphics. And for those of you who don't know, it was line vector graphics similar to Battlezone or Asteroids. More towards Battlezone. The Amiga version that you see here was filled in vectors, full polygons even. And this edition was released in 1987. But I want to tell you about my first experience with Elite, which is one of the main reasons for the Retro Rambles. It's talking about the game, but also my personal experiences. For that, we've got to go back to 1989, and my very good friend David. Now, some of you know David, and most of you won't who watch this. David is my best friend. We've been friends since we were very young, and he's always been a great friend to me. I'll just give you one example of how tremendous this guy is. I went to boarding school, as some of you will know, when I was 12, and a lot of the people I was in primary school with kind of, well, out of sight, out of mind. But David didn't. He kept in touch with me, and it's something to this day that I'm forever thankful for him for, because he's a fantastic chap. But anyway, enough boosting David's ego if he's watching this. As I say, the story begins with David in 1989. Now, I'd heard of Elite. I'd heard many stories about this game, but I'd never got it. At the time, I had an Acorn Electron at home. I would get a C64 later that year, but no, I had an Acorn Electron at the time. I didn't have Elite. I'd never played it, but as I say, I'd heard of it. David had bought it for the Amstrad CPC 464. And he invited me over to play it. And I fell instantly in love with this game. It was just unlike anything I'd played before. It appealed to me in a way that no other game ever had, and to be honest, hasn't since. This freedom of a spaceship, your Cobra Mark III, and the ability to just go out there and do what you want. If you want to trade, trade. You want to be a pirate, be a pirate. You want to mine asteroids, you go mine asteroids. It was just fantastic, and me and David loved it. I would say that we lived this game. It's like I said, you might have seen at the opening credit. This is why I didn't go out much summer of 1989, or 1990, or 1991 even. This game was just such a big part of our lives during the school holidays, to the point where we would have exercise books filled with information on different systems, on what they could trade in, and what they wanted, where the best systems were to go for X, Y, or Z. The best systems for certain tech levels, and we even had, to an extent, I suppose, trade routes. But we made such a fantastic team, because David could do something in Elite I could never do, and I still can't. And I can hear some of you already going, I know what he's going to say, and you're absolutely right, I couldn't dock, I still can't dock. I am terrible at it. That is why I don't really have much game footage to offer you in this video, because I just can't do it. I will probably add a video to my channel to show you what I've been up to on Elite. In fact, I will do, and the link will be down there. And you could just see how truly awful I am. I just can't dock. But David could. And we made this great team because David could dock, and I was a pretty good combat pilot. I developed my own techniques for dealing with ships. I even could face off the Thargoids, who were the major antagonist in the game. More on them in a bit. But a technique I developed, and we jokingly referred to it as the Ridsdale manoeuvre, was I would head towards an enemy at full speed, get him in my sights, fire the retro rockets. You only had so many retro rockets, so you had to be careful. And as I fired my retro rockets, I would fire full power at the enemy ship, and that would do the damage. Sometimes you'd use a missile, but you'd often try to take them out with a gun first, because again, your missiles were finite. You could only carry 4 at a time, so you had to be careful. But I mentioned the Thargoids. They would again show up in First Encounters, and are rumoured to be in Elite Dangerous, but more on those games later on in another video. The Thargoids would appear in what was called witch space. How you would encounter them is you would jump from one system to another using hyperspace, and if you had a jump error, you would be thrown into this witch space, and it was just a black void. But there'd be a Thargoid fleet waiting, and unless you had really good lasers or a lot of missiles, you were stuffed. Because you could get out of witch space, you just had to keep going. And sometimes you'd do it, sometimes you wouldn't. And it was, again, it was luck of the draw. Sometimes that'd be the end of your game. You would just keep going, you just come up against more and more Thargoids, and that's it, bump, game over, redo from start. But sometimes you would tootling on, all of a sudden all the stars come back, and you wouldn't necessarily be in a system you were aiming for, you'd be somewhere completely different. So again, that added to the adventure. One of the aspects of Elite which took me a few years to cotton on to was the fact the ships were mostly named after snakes. Python, adder, fer-de-lance, asp, what have you. Even the prototype constrictor, which you would only encounter in one of Elite's 2 missions. I was lucky to get this mission. The missions were generated at any point in the game. I believe you might have had to have had a certain Elite rating. I'll talk about them in a minute. And you had to hunt this ship down and destroy it. Now these missions were really hard. Well, this mission, I should say, was very hard. And I only managed to do it because I had one of the 2 pieces of rare... In fact, I had both of the pieces of rare technology. There were 2 pieces of technology, the ECM jammer, Electronic Countermeasure Jammer, and the cloaking device. which you could get if you managed to find a world with a tech level higher than 12. They were expensive. The other thing is they would eat your power like you wouldn't believe. Pretty much like the Klingon cloaking device in Star Trek. It would consume power, and the ECM jammer would as well. And also the ECM jammer, you had to be right on top of your enemy's ship to make it work. How you progressed in Elite was by increasing your Elite rating. They would start at Harmless and go all the way up to Elite. And there was even a rank beyond Elite, but I'll talk about that in a second. And how you moved from rank to rank was by the amount of kills you got. Or to put it another way, the amount of stuff you blew up. And each one would count towards your progressing rating. And every so often you'd get a message across the bottom of the screen that would say, "Right on, Commander." For example, when you went from Harmless to Mostly Harmless, you'd get that message once. However, to progress between Deadly and Elite, the highest rank, well, the second highest rank as you're about to find out, you had to see that message 250 times. That's a lot of explosions, a lot of missiles, and a lot of laser fire. On the Amiga version, I think, and definitely on the Amstrad version, there was a rank beyond Elite. And that was Archangel. Now the rumour was you had to get 1,000 Right on Commander messages before you saw that rank. I think that was a good way of determining how you would progress through the ranks, but it wasn't perfect. How they're doing it now in Elite Dangerous is more to my taste. As someone who has diminished vision over the last few years, I don't have the skills to fight in-game anymore. So Elite Dangerous now offers you two alternate routes. You can either attain the Elite rating through trade or exploration. I am progressing quite well on both of those. I do actually believe I have moved slowly up the combat rating, but not particularly well. I've done a lot of trading. Anyway, Elite Dangerous we'll cover in the fourth part. So yeah, that's Elite. My all-time favourite game, the greatest game ever made. And for a while, well into the 90s, the biggest selling computer game in this country. I don't know what it was in international markets. I do know it didn't sell particularly well in America. It wasn't as big over there as it was over here. There was a small following, but nothing like there was over here in the United Kingdom. Next week we're going to go forward to 1993. Well, actually no, we're going to start our story in 92. When a very excitable 15-year-old ran round to his aforementioned friend David's house, brandishing a copy of The One for Amiga Games, a magazine that was very popular at the time, because they were featuring something called High Frontier, which would, several months later, in fact 15 months later, in October 1993, would be released as Frontier Elite 2. And that's what we'll be talking about next week. We're talking about the hype, the delays, the initial release, and the problems. Because there were problems. Oh yes, there were problems. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you follow the link in the description down below, you can watch me try to dock. It's not pretty. Take care, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye for now. And don't forget, if you haven't already, press the subscribe button so you can get notifications and whatnot about our latest videos. And if you've already done that, you're not off the hook. down there, that thumbs up thing, give it a press, give us a thumbs up, you know you want to. And also, leave a comment, start a discussion, tell us what you think, tell us if we've got anything wrong. Because it's not us that's wrong, it'll be you that's wrong, but, you know, it's a free country, you can say what you want. Bye.